Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here, and thanks for joining this 7th edition of the IIC conference on digital policies and the internet economy in Latin America. We generally hold this event in Miami in late spring, summer. This is not Miami, this is not summer. But anyhow, I think thanks to technology and thanks to the digital transformation that we are enjoying, we will have one of the best panels of policymakers and private sector to discuss the challenges and the opportunities that the digital economy has for Latin America. We will have representatives from the main economies in South America: Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, and Peru. But also we will have reactions from the private sector. For the last editions, we have been doing an effort in order to widen the scope of this event, of this discussion, and have not only the vision from the telecommunications sector, but also from the digital ecosystem. So what better than to have also colleagues from Netflix, but also obviously from big telecommunication companies as TIM Brasil and Telefónica. So we have 2 exciting hours ahead of discussion of what are the opportunities that this digital transformation is opening and the challenges that we should address. And we will be organizing this event in 2 blocks, in 2 main blocks. The first one, a block in which we will have these policymakers. So we will have the vision from key government officials in Chile, the Undersecretariat of Telecommunication of Chile, Pamela Guidi. From Peru, we will have Virginia Nakagawa, who is the Vice Minister of Communication. We'll have Iván Mantilla from Colombia, the Vice Minister of Connectivity. We'll have also Artur Coimbra, who is Director for Telecommunication Environment at the Ministry of Science and Technology of Brazil. And last but not least, we will have Martín Olmos, who is the Subsecretary of Information and Communication at Presidency at Argentina, at Casa Rosada. So we will have 3 blocks of questions in this first section, in which I will try to keep a dynamic discussion. No slides, that was a style, but in order to have a view of what are these countries envisaging and what are the measures that during the crisis, after the crisis, are taken in order for connecting everybody and to make sure that our economies really do the digital transformation that we need. So then we will have another block, reaction from the private sector, vision from this digital ecosystem, and the actions that these companies, leading companies in the technology, telecommunications, and media industry are taking at the region. And we will have a final block of Q&A. So please, all the viewers, thank you for being here. Thank you for being there, and start shooting us questions, as we will be addressing those questions both for the policymakers and for the private sector. So I think we're ready to go. I think we're ready to go and start with the policymakers. And what I would suggest is to start with Pamela Guidi. So we have seen all governments doing a lot of innovation during this already 7 months of COVID, of pandemia. Innovations in terms of actions, of regulations, and also addressing how our networks are functioning. So my first question for you and for the other colleagues from the public sector would be: how have you seen the networks functioning in Chile, one of the leading internet and digital economies in the region? And which are the actions, the policy actions and the regulation that you would like to highlight and share with us this morning?
Good morning to all. Obviously, the pandemic raised the importance of telecommunications and connectivity. That was the only way to maintain us connected and working, studying, doing our kind of normal life, especially when we were in quarantine. The network was stressed, especially at the beginning. In only a few months, the traffic increased 60%. That's almost what increased in a year. And the infrastructure at the beginning wasn't prepared for that. And the companies had to bring closer the investment for the year in only a few months. And especially there was also big trouble with the people that they were also in quarantine, that I had to go and serve the network, the technicians, the people that work in the call centers. So there was a difficult time at the beginning when people were completely dependent on telecommunications. There was a stress in the network that the companies were able to rapidly react to it. Now, what we're doing, especially that we're not going back, telecommunications was raised as a even more important part of our lives. We are also entering the industry 4.0, which is going to be dependent in telecommunications, and we're launching in Chile 5G. So we in Chile have a very good network of mobile internet, along with OECD countries. Our flow is in high broadband speed connections. So we are 30 points below the average of OECD in terms of households that are connected with high speed broadband connection. That's our focus for this government. That was at the beginning of the government, but obviously now in the pandemic is even more so. How we're facing it, first from the government point of view, we have approved historical subsidies, the biggest in the history of Chile, to build backbones in those boroughs that had no backbone, or there were only one company, so there was not enough last mile connection and speed or quality. We are then reaching more than 186 out of the 340 boroughs in Chile with this subsidy that we are hoping to connect with last mile projects in each region of Chile. But also we need to work together with the industry so they also make their effort to invest as much as they could, as fast as they could, in order to help us reach more households with a fixed broadband. And for that, we are helping these mega projects. For example, we have one submarine cable that is going from the north of Chile to Arica to Puerto Montt, helping with all the permits to land in all the different regions. And we are working with the industry to have new regulation. In fact, we launched a few months ago a new norm in order to speed the time in order to give concessions in Chile. So with that, at least we cut 30% of the time, which is also a barrier, especially looking up to 5G, which we're gonna need to double our antennas. We need also to we're gonna be doubling the fiber optic in Chile in these 4 years, necessary for a high-speed connection in the household, but also needed to fully have the potential of 5G. Thank you, Angel.
No, very, very, very good points. And actually, I would say that Chile has been really an innovator in the regulation versus COVID. I mean, there were learning times even for the telecommunication companies. We were prepared for these 30-40% hikes in traffic, but never at home. We expected those traffics at the office, whatever that is. I've been out of office already for 7 months. But never at home. So it has been a learning process with the public sector, and I think the innovations that Chile had done are remarkable. And also in Peru. I mean, in Peru also we had there was a lot of the dialogue with the government of how to move forward. It was one of the countries hit earlier and hardest by COVID-19, unfortunately, and the government was also innovating in how making sure that the system and the networks were functioning. So Virginia Nakagawa, a good friend, a good ally, tell us what are you more proud of, and the vision and how the networks worked during these challenging times.
Thank you so much, Angel, and thank you so much for your kind invitation to this event. It's a great pleasure, and I fully agree with what you said, learning times, okay? And sure, there is learning times for all the companies, for the industries and the government policymakers. In fact, as you said, the COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated the telecommunication response capacity of all states. Peru was not oblivious to this reality. For this reason, telecommunications were declared an essential service. This measure was adopted considering the oncoming flow of telecommunication services traffic as a result of confinement of families and so on. In this period, data traffic increased by more than 30%. In order to face this situation, the Peruvian government was decided to establish facilitation for the deployment of infrastructure and the temporary allocation of spectrum. The first decree established the creation of a special procedure to obtain authorization for installation of telecommunication infrastructure as an automatic approval procedure. This is very important, automatic approval procedure. By submitting the single application for the installation of telecommunication infrastructure to local governments during the national health emergency, we consider the remote modality and digital payment. The exception for this process for infrastructure project without significant impact and facilitation for fiber optic deployment. But the second decree was very important also. This decree allows temporarily assigning radioelectric spectrum to operator of telecommunication carriers or end public services upon request duly supported in case that imply a potential danger of loss of continuity and or quality of the indicated services, of telecommunication services in general, during or as a result of the national health emergency due to COVID-19. The maximum term of validity is 6 months, extendable for 6 months, only 6 months. In fact, 1 year, no more, because as you know, this is an essential resource in general. The operators must provide internet access services to a health establishment or educational institution in each district or local area where they have been assigned radio spectrum. It also allows to regulate access and or share use of active telecommunication infrastructure and national roaming in order to guarantee the provision of public telecommunication services benefiting approximately 250 locations. In fact, in Peru, it's very important, these two decrees, because show the point of view of the Peruvian government in order to establish a very accommodation in order to guarantee all the networks in all our country. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks a lot, Virginia. And you touched 2 or 3 key points. I mean, how to make sure that our citizens had the information that they needed in order to fight the pandemic, but also that our children kept on studying. So there were really some good ideas, some good dialogue, and they are here to stay. As Pamela said, we are not going back. Actually, we want to go forward. Another forward-looking government. I'm not objective because I'm based in Bogota, Colombia, and Ivan is a good friend, as you all are. But a vision from Colombia, from what have you been doing? How have you seen the networks, our systems working so far, and all the ideas and all the initiatives that you have been pushing? The screen is yours, Ivan.
Hi, Angel. Hi, everyone. And thank you very much for the IIC for this invitation. I'm honored to be here and to share with you some particular ideas and experience based on the Colombian situation. Angel, I think that at the start of this pandemic, we faced with 2 big challenges. The first one was keep connected people connected with quality, because in my opinion, it was the first real test of our network capacities, for example, in Colombia. And the second big challenge was to accelerate the inclusion of not connected people, because all of us were to stay at home and all of us we needed internet. In this way, we set a big number of strategies and normative change and regulation change. And let me share with you and or with all the audience some examples, just to provide some reflection. The first, and like in Peru, for example, was to declare the telecommunication services as essential services. It means that all the operators were able to continue working, to continue operating their networks, for example, increasing the capacity of the networks. And the second, I think, goal of this strategy was that from the government, we were able to continue with the last mile program, in which we are connecting 500,000 households in the lowest stratum in our country in order to provide, of course, the internet services. And maybe it was the first decision that we take, and I'm sure it was very right. The second one was thinking about the industry. And it was by means of an emergency law, we relaxed some regulations, obligations, in order to allow the operator to focus in providing the services to all the people, and also the services with quality. And then the regulator, the CRC in Colombia, implemented, of course, this mandate or this normative guideline by means of an emergency regulation also. And the third example that I want to share with you and with all the audience, it was that in an emergency law from the government, we set, for the first time in Colombia, it was very, very dangerous. We set a possibility to providers to manage traffic, I think, and we make a little bit exemption to the net neutrality for this period. And also we asked to the video on demand platforms to prioritize the transmission of the content in standard definition. I think that all the platforms, at least the most important platform, of course, the most commercial, did this. And I think that thanks to this, and also thanks to the investment and the capacity increments that all the operators did in Colombia, we keep the internet stable in Colombia. Remember that in the past months here, the traffic increased at an average 40% per month. It was a very high increase in traffic, and we keep internet stable, I think, thanks to the collaborative work between operators and video on demand platforms and all the, let's say, OTTs and the regulator, and of course on the government. And I think these strategies allow us to keep internet stable, but also it was important to keep connected people connected. And for this, for example, we also made an exception of the VAT. Remember that the VAT for internet in Colombia, the taxes is 19%. It's very high. And we make an exception for months. And with this exception, we benefit 18.3 million users, for example, of mobile plans in postpaid modality. And also we benefit more than 230 million prepaid mobile recharge, which is also another important way to stay connected in Colombia, which is the prepaid phone. And then also, for example, we change also some labor standards in the labor laws in Colombia in order to increase, for example, the probability to keep connected people be connected. In Colombia, we have a transportation subsidy for the people which earn less than $475 per month, and the subsidy is about $27. We changed this transportation subsidy to a digital subsidy in order to allow the people to pay the bill of the internet or to buy a connection in the case they don't have any connection. And also we reduce the maximum time to provide the infrastructure deployment licenses. For example, in Colombia, normally is 60 days, we reduced to 10 days. And also, just in order to finalize, Angel, we launched a public intervention, which was a Prevenir Conectados program, in which we provide more than 4.5 million prepaid recharge to the people, also only with one condition. We asked to the people, please download the coronavirus app, which in Colombia is Corona app, in order to track the virus. And if you do this, I will provide you free of charge for you 1 gigabyte and 100 minutes of voice. And with these strategies, and also, for example, the last, maybe it's very important, thinking about the kids, we deploy with the education ministry a zero rating educational mobile website in which the education ministry provides more than 8,000 contents for educational in the country. And with this, maybe we can see some examples which are good starting points in order to think about the permanent policies for the future. And I think that this is just some points that I want to share with you. And maybe in the second and the third question, I will make some another reflection. Thank you, Angel.
No, Ivan, impressive. And for anybody who doubted that if Colombia was the #3 in e-government and digital initiatives as the OECD just established, well, we will play your part, because it's very important, all the innovations that this country has done. And just to put some context, the increase of traffic in most of our countries just overnight, I mean in mid-March, was equivalent to the total traffic that our networks were carrying just 5 years ago. So actually the delta, this is what government have been having to regulate, and operators, and also obviously the users of these data. I'm pretty sure our colleague from Netflix will have some ideas on this regulation and managing of traffic, but let's keep that to the last part, and go to a small country, Brazil, the big country in South America. Also a lot of challenges, a lot of action from the national federal level to the subnational level, a lot of innovation. So Arturo Coimbra, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Angel. I agree with my colleagues from other countries and from the industry. It is a great pleasure to be here. This is a great opportunity for Brazil to come in contact with other countries' experience regarding telecommunications regulation in the context of the pandemic, and learn from that. In particular, Brazil has been planning a series of improvements on its telecommunications regulatory framework, and the whole pandemic situation helped some of those issues to be solved quickly, while it stalled some others. In Brazil, just to keep the context, the Minister of Health declared a public health emergency of national importance on February 3rd, 2020. The first official case happened on February 26th in São Paulo. And since then, the moving average of new infected people has grown until August 4th, when the downward trend started so far. So on March 20, telecommunications and internet services were declared essential, being indispensable to meet the urgent needs of the community, thus considering those that, if not met, endanger the population's survival, health, or safety. On the same day, the Ministry of Science, Technology, Innovations and Communications created the Crisis Committee for Supervision and Monitoring of the Impacts of COVID-19 in the scope of communications, and established guidelines to be adopted by the National Agency of Telecommunications, or what we call Anatel. From this initiative, I highlight the following measures. There was a signature by Anatel, representative entities and operators of a public commitment to keep Brazil connected, covering initiatives to maintain the supply of telecommunication services, health security for employees, priority service to agencies that provide public utility services, adequacy of invoice payment mechanisms, and sending alert and information message to the population. There was also suspension suspension of late payment penalty on defaulted obligations. So if people didn't pay their fee for their service, the service wasn't suspended. There was an extension of the deadline for payment of taxes in the telecommunications sector. And there was a promotion of broadband connectivity in up to 16,000 health units alongside the country, allowing telemedicine, use of electronic medical records, transmission of image exams, sending and receiving on prescription, research and development, database updates, and other solutions. And at last, there was an exemption from data consumption for e-government applications and others, increased bonus on data deductibles, release of public Wi-Fi points, flexible payment terms for defaulting users, and many other measures that I will not talk about here due to our limited time. And regarding specifically how telecommunications networks behaved in this period, we must say that from February to August of this year, there was an increase in demand for services provided over the internet, and consequently, in the use of telecommunications networks. Anatel registered more than 1 million new fixed broadband subscriptions, with emphasis on FTTH technology, which increased its market share from 33 to 41%. So showing this that people are looking for higher speeds for their connectivity. Also, data traffic increased, considering the fixed and mobile network, by 34% within 4 weeks of pandemic. And it has been keeping its level since then. So closing my initial statement, it's also important to notice that, on the other hand, the average availability rate of the fixed broadband service, which measures the time the network operates without interruption or degradation, has slightly decreased from 99% to 95%, which is coherent with all social distance policies that were taken in measure in the country, and also is related to some other difficulties concerning that matter. So I believe that are the main issues that I can raise about that.
No, thanks, Arthur. And I would add to that from the private sector, we also welcomed a lot the coordination between the federal government and the different states, because in many cases, and my colleagues from the private sector will probably agree, we have like a clear vision from the capital, and that sometimes doesn't translate into the same action in the regions. And in this crisis, we saw a high degree of coordination in the biggest economies in the region, in Mexico and in Brazil. So that was very much welcome. And thanks, Artur, for this first intervention. So we will close this first round with Martín Olmos from Argentina, another of the countries who are relevant in defining the agenda in the region. So Martín, the screen is yours.
Hello, Angel. It's a pleasure to share this panel with such distinguished panelists. Thank you to the IIC for inviting me. I'm going to repeat some of the things that my colleagues already said, and some of the measures are similar. We established connectivity as an essential service, and that allowed us to keep running, the workers, keep working in maintaining the infrastructure, and that was very, very important. We also encouraged agreements between wholesale internet providers and between ISPs to assist each other and share infrastructure in the event of network congestion. That was an initiative that was led by ARSAT, which is the state-run telecommunications company, who has a backbone internet network, very important, 34,000 kilometers of fiber network. But all the network providers quickly joined this initiative, and this was very important for us. We also reached agreements with the main streaming platforms to lower the bit rate, and that allowed to take some pressure off the networks. Some of the platforms made it as a global initiative, but we had conversations with all the platforms and the ones that are local here from Argentina, and they quickly joined this initiative. We also reached agreements with the mobile providers to zero rate the platform set up by the Ministry of Education to distribute all the educational materials to keep classes going online and through the media during the quarantine. We had a very strict and very early quarantine. So this was really, really important to keep the children learning and attending school remotely. We also established a mandate to keep the most vulnerable population connected through economic difficulties to meet the bill payments for ICT services. Keep them connected with basic services that were defined in conversations with the industry. And I don't want to avoid the subject. We had to take some difficult decisions. Some of them were not very popular in the ICT industry. We established a price freeze until the end of the year. But I want to be clear about this. This was a one-time emergency decision in the context of the pandemic. And its disastrous economic consequences. Just to provide some context, the falling GDP, as in many of our countries and in the world, was really significant. We established a cash transfer program for families, and an emergency income program that reached 9 million people in a country that has 44 million people, 44 million population, right? So this is the context in which we made this decision, but we have very clear the importance of the private sector and the need of investment, and how the price system is key. It's the key to provide incentives for this. So we are working in conversation with with the ICT industry to write the specific rules and the regulation of how this is going to work beginning next year. So we have a very competitive price system, establishing some basic services for the most vulnerable population, and then competition for the rest of the service. So this is the main measures we are taking. I'm going to pick some of the other things that we've done. We presented a national connectivity plan that makes emphasis in public investment. We are doubling the public investment in connectivity, and we've also innovated in some important programs funded by the Universal Service Fund. I want to mention one in particular, because in Argentina, traditionally, the Universal Service Fund was aimed to fund infrastructure for low density areas. And we've established a program to provide infrastructure for these kind of islands that we have even in big cities, you know, the shanty towns and the informal constructions that we have inside the cities where connectivity, you know, in the big metropolitan areas, we have good connectivity, but we have some islands where that really need investment and infrastructure, and we established a special universal service fund program for that.
Thanks, Martin, and we will devote one block, the last block, on connectivity, because frankly, this is one of the key. But thanks for the panorama. I think 5 of you touched 3 or 4 areas which were key and I think were common and were fast in responding. I mean, telecommunications, IT, and essential services obviously opened and made possible that our colleagues on the field were doing installations and maintaining the network, but also very important that an essential services also keeps connected those who cannot pay temporarily for the service. So that was a key issue. Secondly, some of you have highlighted light regulation. I mean, there was some innovation because there are some issues, some legacy regulation that might be revised, and then out of necessity, out of urgency, it was possible to be done. The transformation towards digital channels, I think that's another advance that is not reversible. And finally, some focus on beyond the sector. Digital is a mean, and it's a means, for instance, to education. That's why it's so important what some of the companies and the governments are doing in that respect. But let's move to the next stage. Let's imagine we are post-COVID, whatever that means and whenever that arrives, because we don't know. There are many uncertainties, but what we know for sure is that the post-COVID Latin America is going to be more digital. So how are governments, how are countries seeing the digital strategy? And in particular, how are they expanding these telecommunication networks? We have some of the countries expanding on 4G, but also we have some of the countries, in particular Chile, who already started the bidding process for the 5G network. So I think that's the idea, to see. Imagine we are there whenever and whatever that means, but this is going to be a more digital Latin America. How we get there? What are the digital transformation plans that your governments have? So let's start by the same order, and maybe with you, Pamela.
Thank you, Angel. Yes, our vision is to make Chile and South America a stronger digital region. That's where we are leading a project to connect both Chile and South America with Asia. We need to become closer to the continent that is growing dramatically in digital. For that, we are launching or working already 2 years in this project of transoceanic cable that will coincide also when 5G technology begins massification according to our Gantt card. Why Chile is leading this project, and I also use this opportunity to keep advancing with all our partners, all our countries around that want to share information in both communications ways with Asia. There's not these cables to be possible, cannot only use obviously the traffic that will come from and to Chile, but we need Argentina, Brazil, Peru, Colombia, all the countries that want to join. This project will substantially increase the data traffic exchange capacity of South America with Asia, which is very relevant through the massive development of new digital technologies. Therefore, we believe that this will allow South America to face to be in a better position to face the digital revolution and economy 4.0. Secondly, this cable will enhance the different productive sectors and at a national regional level, since there will be a direct submarine connection with two continents, Oceania and Asia. This will be very relevant, obviously, of the economic situation that we are living post-pandemic. And finally, the transoceanic cable will provide alternative route of digital connectivity in an international level to Chile and South America, since all current connectivity is mainly through the US. We are in this vision to make Chile and South America a digital hub. We are also working to connect, to have fiber optic in all our frontier passes. We have more than 24, I believe, passes with Argentina, Peru, and different areas. We are working to have fiber connectivity also in 11 of these passes this year, so we can capture the traffic of the region, and the traffic from Brazil or Argentina can go through the Pacific with the very alternative routes. So it's resilient, robust, but also can take a lot of terabytes of information. In this vision, we are doubling, as I said before, the fiber optic in Chile, and connecting better with South America, and promote all the digital transformation that is needed in the private sector, along with the government sector, where we see telecommunications as a needed enabler, but not sufficient if we work alone. And that's why we're trying to connect all different ministries. So we are working together with the government, each minister, but also with the private sector in taking advantage of telecommunications and technologies. Thank you.
No, that's great, and that's music to the ears of those as me who are Latin American by choice. I mean, the view to have an ambition because it's, and then the regional view is not country by country, but also think about South America, Latin America as a region that can really challenge and can obviously cooperate with the leaders in Asia is key. So this project of Chile with the South American Asia Pacific submarine cable is a very, very, very interesting one. Going to the neighbor country, Peru, Virginia, looking forward, looking ahead, since these times are not going back, the previous times are not going back. What's the vision in Peru of a more digital society and economy?
Thank you, Angel. Well, in fact, we are working very hard to promote the development of an increasingly connected digital Peru. Peru is a huge and very, very, very big country with a different areas and different geography, which encourage the adoption of 5G in favor of industries, citizens, and companies. The impact of the GDP will be very important for our countries. In some studies, it is determined that 5G technology will allow the economy to grow by at least 1%. In that sense, as Peru, we are working very hard on the following issues. The first place, the public award for 19 megahertz of radio spectrum in AWS and 2.3 gigahertz frequency bands has been commissioned. These are mainly based on investment commitment, only investment commitments to promote connectivity in the country, valued at $291.4 million. In a second place, the following issues has also been considered. The approval of a standard that will allow the use of 3.5 gigahertz band for any technology. It is necessary because the actual allocation is for wired internet or landlines. Now we have 4 operators with allocation in 3.5 bands, and they can use this spectrum for any technologies. This is now. Second, a public consultation document to identify that 26 gigahertz millimeter band proposed the awards of at least 200 megahertz in the 3.5 band together with the 26 gigahertz band. This public consultation will be in December in this year. Next, identification of unlicensed spectrum for TV white spaces and Wi-Fi 6. And finally, but not least, it is necessary an efficient use of existing infrastructure, RAN sharing, for example. In the beginning, as you know, the deployment of 5G will be not standalone, and it will be supported in the existing 4G infrastructure. And regarding our fiber optic projects, as you know, we have in Peru, we have a lot of fiber optic projects. I will talk about in the next question in order to respect the time. Thank you so much.
No, thanks, Virginia. And crucial point. I mean, the digital investment is key for the economic reactivation. If we are worried about the economic situation and the social consequences of this, I mean, investing in digital is feasible and is one of the engines of inclusive growth. So that's a good point, and we will touch the connectivity part in the last round. So Ivan, same question. One of the, as the OECD said, one of the countries at the OECD leading the efforts on the digital side. What are the things that you are pushing? I know in particular you're pushing a lot the connectivity part, the spread, and the dissemination of the 4G, also pilots on 5G. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Angel. I think that, Angel, in this point, maybe I have to say that now we have superior guideline, let me say. Maybe we have to accelerate the digital social inclusion. This is our one and the biggest problem that we have. For example, I think that we have to guide all the public policies under three drivers. The first one is that the flexibility on the regulation. We tested in the first question I answered this. We tested the flexibility on regulation works. Okay, we have to test and we have to some adjustment, but it works. The second one, it's very important, is that we need more public investment in the next 3 years to close the digital divide among the people which is living in poverty. For example, in Colombia, we have a big challenge because we have more than 13 million people living in poverty, people that they don't have money to pay the service, and we have to help us. We have to help them, I'm sorry. And the third driver is that we have to guide all the public policies and the decision in order to reduce the cost of the investment, because we need more investment. You know, Angel, I always like to provide the numbers. For example, in Colombia, in order to connect the 6 million households that we need to connect to fixed internet, we need more than $10,000 million. Okay, we don't have this money. I hope this money is coming from the private sector, but okay, you have to provide the conditions to stimulate this investment, but also stimulate with public investment. This is a general view. Let me provide you some examples that we are doing in Colombia. The first one, the big challenge that we have, is that, remembering, Colombia is a very big country in terms of area, and last year we had only 9.7% of the 4G coverage, for example, in rural areas. As you know, and maybe all the audience know, we did a spectrum auction last December, and it was a very, very big goal for Colombia. Thanks to this auction, we will move from 9% of rural coverage to 80% of 4G rural coverage in less than 5 years from now, which is a very good result from this auction. And also, we will have a 100% country with 4G coverage in all the urban areas with high capacity networks, also thanks to this spectrum auction for all the obligations that we put in this auction. Also, we have performed some normative change in order to reduce the cost, for example, of the investment. We have reduced the microwave spectrum prices, We have reduced, for example, the sectorial taxes that the sector was waiting for 5-7 years. We changed some months ago. We reduced at least 15% these contributions. And I think from 2024, Colombia will be a big country in terms of coverage for 4G, thanks to the spectrum assignment, because now for us, and thanks to the law, the ICT law that we issued last year, the spectrum for us is an instrument of public policy in which we have to use, for example, in last December, to cover all the rural areas, and now we have to think about how to provide more spectrum and continue with spectrum assignment, but not for coverage, because as I said before, Colombia is solving this problem, but for increasing the capacity and the quality of the networks. And we have to recognize, of course, that we need to reduce also the spectrum prices for IMT, because we need more private sector investing more and more and more. And the second problem that we have is the people living in poverty in urban areas. And we have to connect at least 5.5 million households. And for this, we are working on the Last Mile program, which is a program of about $150 million public investment, full public investment, in order to connect and to close this urban gap, let me say. And also, let me provide you 2 examples more. Also thinking about the schools in rural areas, most of them probably free of COVID, of course, and we have to keep the people living there. And for this, we are launching a program of more than $550 million to connect 10,000 schools, public schools in rural and remote areas in Colombia, at least for 10 years or 11 years. I hope we will provide the results of this public tender the next month in November, but in which we will connect and close the digital divide in all the rural areas in Colombia, and also connecting the public schools. And my last example is that nowadays everyone talk about 5G because 5G is a good telecommunication technology, of course, and it's a sexy technology, and we can talk about this technology here in these important panels. But for us, the importance of 5G is that we see 5G as a new source of economical growth, because 5G, the real importance of 5G is that this technology enable new business models. And the new business models, maybe most of them we don't have, for example, in Colombia in this moment, no new models based on 5G technology. These new business models allow us to generate new employment, and new employment is a new source, is a source of economical growth. And for this, we are developing a 5G public policy, but an integral public policy, not only a spectrum assignment that we hope to provide new spectrum assignment the next year into 2021, because we have 400 megahertz in the band of 3.5 gigahertz, for example, but also thinking about the entrepreneurship. For example, from the next January, the ICT minister will launch some programs to finance entrepreneurship that develop business models working under 5G technology. Now, as you said, good Angel, in Colombia, we are testing the 5G technology in 5 cities, in 45 locations, with 6 companies working on that. And the last point is that also remember that 5G means more data in the network, and more data in the network means more risks. And also we are working with the Ministry of Defense and with the government, and also with ICT Minister to change and to update our digital security strategy. I think that now, just to summarize, we have to work closing the digital divide among the people with 4G technology, for example, and fixed internet in the urban areas, but also we have to starting from now to close the digital entrepreneurship divide, which is the all other divide that we have. And I think 5G is the tool to do this. Thank you, Angel.
No, thanks a lot. And clearly, going digital is not just digitalizing citizens, but also governments, states, and economies. In order to take advantage, I mean, to use the time efficiently, in the next two interventions, Brazil and Argentina, what I'm gonna ask you, please, colleagues, is to touch both questions. I mean, the digital strategy of your countries and how closing the digital divide is part of it. For instance, in the case of Argentina, the plan Conectar that was mentioned. So let's go first with Brazil, Arthur, and then we go to Martin, and we get the private sector speaking, because they are really willing to give some vision and some reaction. So Arthur.
Well, thank you, Angel. So Brazil has a specific strategy for digital transformation, as well as a digital government strategy and a national cybersecurity strategy. We didn't find any need to change those strategies, but we did find the need to accelerate the implementation of several initiatives, such as the revision of our Universal Service Law, Universal Service Fund law, to allow it to be used to initiatives aimed at the universalization of broadband internet in the country, since it can only be used to fix telephony today. There's also a need to expand broadband connectivity in the Amazon region, and also to initiate processes to adapt type of telecommunication service granting from concession to authorization, which will allow new private investments in the country. Also, it's important to say something about the 5G auction, which we're planning for the first semester of 2021. The ministry published an ordinance setting the guidelines for the auction of those 4 bands that we're going to set to bid. In addition to the criteria for the coexistence for the new technology and TVRO, we have a very important interference issue here in Brazil regarding the 3.5 gigahertz band and TVRO. At the moment, 90% of the cities in Brazil have 4G coverage and 99% have 3G. However, mobile phone service commitments covered even before that ordinance only the headquarters of the municipalities. So there's a huge number of towns outside the headquarters of those cities that are not covered. So for the 5G announcement, the ordinance determines that to serve with 4G technology or higher, cities, towns, isolated urban areas, and rural settlements with a population of more than 600 inhabitants, also to cover federal highways with mobile broadband, and to implement high-speed backhaul, preferably in optical fiber for municipalities not yet served. In addition, Anatel must enable the use of radio frequency bands by interested third parties in case these services are not activated within the agreed deadlines, and establish grant models on a primary or secondary basis. Now, regarding digital gap, on the one hand, it's necessary to expand telecommunications networks in the country and stimulate competition between operators and between manufacturers of ICT equipment, so that the population has coverage of broadband networks and products and services at affordable prices. On this point, I highlight the guidelines adopted for the 5G auction, as I just said, the regulation of the general law of antennas here in Brazil, the connectivity actions for schools and health units, and tax incentive policies, and the work in progress to, as I said, review the Universal Service Fund law. On the other hand, it is essential to stimulate interest in the ability to use information and communication technologies, and research shows that currently the main reasons for not using the internet are related to these points, and not to the price of products and ICT services themselves. So regarding the coverage of the expansion of the coverage for the Amazon region, it's important to say that we have a project called the Connected North, and as I said, the Amazon region is the most underconnected region in Brazil. And through this Connected North, we're going to expand more than 10,000 kilometers of under the river, or the riverbed cables, and to allow the coverage of all the population of the forest. reaching up to Tabatinga, which is our most western city that's in the border with Colombia, with the city of Leticia, thus interconnecting with Leticia. So it's a very important program. It will cost us some $300 or $400 million in total, and we have just started them doing its first segment in the state of Pará here in Brazil.
Well, thanks a lot, and again, I mean, it's clear that most countries are already thinking about 5G. Some of them even doing the bidding process, but not forgetting that we have still to deplete full coverage of 4G to connect those connected, not only in remote rural areas, but also in urban areas, as Martin was mentioning. So just to close this first block, Martin, digital transformation plans of Argentina, maybe all the Plan Conectar that you just released and are pushing would be great to be listened to.
Okay, I'll try to keep it short. From our vision, digital inclusion is the name of social justice in the century. It's key. It's an enabler. Increasingly, in order to access basic rights and services as education, health, jobs, you need connectivity. And of course, the industry and productive processes are increasingly mediated by connectivity. And here resides the importance of 5G, as it was mentioned before. But as it was also mentioned before, we still have a lot to do regarding 4G. In Argentina, the 2014 4G spectrum auction established coverage obligations in 5 stages that included municipalities and towns of more than 500 people and a series of road corridors throughout the country, right? Until today, more than 80% of the population has 4G coverage, but there's still an important number of small towns from stages 4 and 5 who lack coverage, in addition to the almost 1,500 localities of less than 500 people who were not included in the coverage obligations. This represents, less than 300,000 people. It's not a lot of people compared to the whole population, but a very important, almost 40% of municipalities and small towns, right? This is the issue with Argentina. This is one of the main challenges. We have a country that is the number 8 in its territory, and we have 4 or 5 big metropolitan areas where most of the population is concentrated. But the challenge is to bring connectivity for all. We know that, as I said, we have a lot to do to reach universal access to 4G connectivity. We have to make more spectrum available, and we want to do that next year. We had also an interesting experience implementing RAN sharing for certain road corridors, and I think we can extend that experience for small towns. Regarding 5G, we're still working in a spectrum plan. The pandemic caused a delay of about 6 or 8 months, and we expect to allocate the 5G spectrum by the middle of 2021, and hopefully we can launch a bid process for the end of next year. In the meantime, we have a lot of work to do to improve competition and make the deployment of infrastructure easier. we have to implement fixed portability. We have mobile portability, but fixed portability is still pending implementation. We are working in new rules for the deployment of infrastructure and infrastructure sharing, the sharing of essential facilities such as pipes and poles. And as I mentioned before, we are doubling the public investment in connectivity infrastructure. We launched Plan Conectar, which has some key elements. We're building a new satellite, a new telecommunication satellite that will join the ARSAT constellation. It will provide broadband services in Ka band, and the main goal is to reach rural areas and the parts of the country that there are no terrestrial connectivity, and the places where we can't reach with fiber and radio connectivity, right? We are also extending and upgrading our Red Federal de Fibra Óptica, the wholesale, the backbone internet network of ARSAT. We are reaching about 250 more municipalities, basically most of them small and middle-sized towns, to improve connectivity. We are also strengthening the digital television that will allow us to advance the next year in the turn off of the analogical television, at least starting, right? We are planning to do it in stages, and we're going to be starting in the middle of the next year, and then we are making a big investment in the ARSAT data center to provide cloud services, probably in association with private cloud providers for the whole government. So that are some of the main points, in addition to the programs that were passed for the Universal Service Fund that I mentioned before, for informal settlements, for places with low density, for public institutions such as schools and health institutions. And that are some of the main actions that we are carrying to bring universal access to connectivity and ICT services. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Martin. And unfortunately, they don't allow me as a chair to pose you some questions on football and TV. But anyhow, we'll leave that for another conversation, because our colleagues from the private sector obviously also want to have a say. And in this case, I'm just the facilitator. So as I mentioned, we have a great panel. I mean, talking about the digital economy is talking beyond just telecommunications, although we have Telefónica and Team Brazil, Mario and Jose Juan. But who doesn't have Netflix, right? Right now. So it's great to have also here Paula Carol Piña, the head of public policy of Netflix Latin America. And the plan here is to start a first round of reactions. How do you see the governments? What do you feel after you have heard from key countries in the region? How serious you think some of these plans are? First reactions, and then we go to plans of each company and vision. Paula, all yours.
Thank you, Angel. And first of all, I do want to take this opportunity to thank the IIC once again, Amanda and the whole team for the invitation and the ability to be here speaking with all of you. And it's an honor to be in a panel with so many distinguished colleagues, both from the industry and the government. Yeah, I'm Paula Pina. I'm Director of Public Policy for Latin America for Netflix. You know, we've definitely seen a lot of transformation in the region in the 10 years that we have been offering our service in Latin America, almost 10 years. But I think nobody could have expected the changes and the reactions that we've seen during COVID. Certainly, you know, when all of this happened, we were faced with the unprecedented, unplanned, unimaginable situation where, for the first time in our lives, and certainly for the first time in the life of the internet, we were all home. We were all having to work and study and entertain ourselves at home. And we at Netflix, we definitely saw that with great responsibility. You know, for our part, we offer entertainment for people. And in a time when we're all suddenly facing very scary news outside and having to keep ourselves under control and calm, and having to keep our children entertained, having services like ours, I think, has provided a great escape for people as they're stuck home. Obviously, we know that with that comes a lot of responsibility in terms of the health of the networks and in the countries in which we were operating. Right away, we started working very closely with our partners, both within the industry and the ISPs, but definitely working very closely with the governments, many of the folks here represented, in trying to figure out what we could do in terms of our part to make sure that internets wouldn't collapse, that nobody would be without connectivity, that people were able to do the important work that they needed to do at home, whether that's school or telemedicine or just connecting on VCs and connecting with their colleagues and families and friends. And so we did that. In addition, you know, I think it's important to keep in mind that normally we already take steps to make sure that our content is delivered efficiently. And we do that by constantly innovating in our encoding. We provide adaptive bit rates for our streams so that the streams, before you click play, it recognizes the network available on a particular stream, and it will adapt the quality of the content based on that. And those are steps we take normally. We're always innovating in that area. But because of COVID and because of this sudden increase in the traffic, we decided to be a little bit more aggressive and to cap our bit rates. We did this, again, because we were dealing with an unknown. Nobody knew what things would look like. And so we decided to take this temporary measure to the way it worked is that there are many, sometimes dozens of bit rates that go, levels of bit rates that go in a stream. And we decided to just limit those during the pandemic. And what we saw was a average of 25% in reduction of bit streams in networks. The reality, however, is that the networks in Latin America are very robust, and Latin America has really proven to be a leader in a way in building an ecosystem that really stimulates innovation and competition, and it's really proven to be able to handle the influx of traffic that we've seen during COVID. So we have since reverted out of limiting bit rates, and we're just continuing to work very, very closely with our partners, again, both in government and with the industry, to make sure that things are not changing. And if you know, hopefully we won't get to this, but if we have to go into mass lockdowns again, we will, of course, take the steps necessary to do that. But I think, you know, keeping in mind that we are not a provider of connectivity to people, you know, we did this in working with our ISPs. We also took steps, you know, we are, as producers of content, as sort of important stakeholders in the overall audiovisual production community, we also took steps to build what we called COVID hardship funds, along with some local partners in key regions, in key markets in the region. So these were funds that were helping below the line workers in the audiovisual production industry with a stipend that allowed them to, you know, continue to provide for their families. And it was a very difficult situation for us when we had suddenly all of our productions halted. And we are very active working in that industry to make sure that things can resume safely in terms of productions. But I think, you know, what we're seeing is that Latin America overall has really done very well, I think, in terms of its networks and in terms of the level of seriousness that it's taken, this pandemic, and we are confident that we will hopefully get back to normal soon.
Thanks a lot, and many of your points resonate, because as many of our viewers know, now AT&T Latin America owns DirecTV, and also we will be launching HBO Max. So we felt a responsibility of providing information, entertainment, and even facilitating education with some of our hats. But we have another hat, which is the connectivity part, and that links to the other panelists. We have listened to the policymakers expecting private investment, more private investment to close this digital gap, talking about the connectivity plans, the 4G, 5G. By the way, 5G is going to change also the entertainment industry in ways that we have not really imagined yet. So let's move on and go to Mario Girasole from Team Brazil. How are you seeing from an Italian Latin American company the sector, the views of the governments and the key issues that we should solve and we should address? Mario, all yours.
First of all, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for this outstanding panel with public and private sector vision. This is the dialogue that I think enrich always the evolutions of our sector, and IIC is one of the most important worldwide forum to foster this dialogue. So I participate with great interest. So as was said, COVID of course accelerated the digital transformation and showed, if necessary, how essential and how resilient is our telecom sector. But what we are talking about when we talk about digital transformation, reflecting about this month, this year of experience, probably we have to focus on three elements. The first one is technology, but technology is an enabler of the digital transformation. It's not the only or the main driver. There is of course a second element fundamental, that is the mindset, the culture. And in this case, the name of this culture was an emergency. In general, culture, mindset, something that is an outcome of slow processes. This time the process was not so slow, and suddenly we jump into a new reality. But as a third pillar, we needed policies, new business policies, new public policies that are the essential middleware of this transformation. And so we were forced to some extent to a very fast learning to accelerate the combination of these three elements, and probably we discovered in Latin America, but elsewhere, how digital we are, and probably we didn't know how digital we are. So in particular, how was this journey, this digital transformation journey or awareness on Team Brazil? Again, probably we can segment this in three steps. The first steps was March 19th. As a management group, we decided overnight to put all our people in home working. It was a very hard decision, and in this decision, technology was not the main concern. No, we had other concerns, and of course the key word was health, was to make our people, our colleagues and their families in a safer situation, even also because as having an Italian mother company, we already had an experience of what we were going to face in Brazil and in Latin America. You know, the tragedy that Italy known some weeks before our lockdown in Brazil. Then again, we had the second step, and the key word of the second step is business continuity. Once you have your people safe, how to continue the business. Of course, the business continuity is where the policy makes the difference. Business policy, new work organization, new governance, new strategic plan, project selection. But above all, public policies. And I have to register, but it was already mentioned that it was in Brazil, we had a very, very intense dialogue and coordination with the public authority to ensure basically two things. First of all, that people would stay connected, and secondly, a number of general interest services that the sector granted to the population. No, not to make a list of the things we've done. Probably I want to mention two milestones. No, the first milestone was when the Ministry of Communication made a public appeal of people don't forget to pay the bill for the service they use. It was something probably not very popular, but fundamental to understand, to make people understand that if people start not to pay the bill, there is some service continuity difficulties. This was very mature, and on the other side, of course, this was accompanied by the new flexibility, of course, on the company side for the payment condition for those people that effectively had not possibility. And the other milestone was the first joint advertising institutional campaign of the telecommunication sector together. It was Fique Bem, Fique em Casa, so stay safe, stay at home. That was a very important message in which telecommunication sector put its accountability to maintain people connected once, of course, with difference of movement in social isolation, etc. And then, just to finalize the third and current step, the key word is the so-called new normal. No? We already opened at a voluntary basis our offices for the return back, and less than 5% of people opted for it. This means that something happened definitively, no? And we have to deal with it, and starting from now, plan what until some months ago was simply not imaginable. And so to summarize, it was a great experience of coordination. Of course, things are still going on. Relevant things for public policy and regulation happened in this period. It was not only a COVID-driven period. And then this strengthened on one side the resilience of the sector, and on the other side the value of an open and constant dialogue with the public authorities. Thank you.
Thanks, Mario. And it's very important. I mean, because I will insist in one point. I mean, our networks were tested, but were tested at home, because right now, I mean, it's this distance work, remote work is here to stay. In our case, yeah, we will be working from home at least for some period already. But it was a huge test in an unexpected place. And despite that fact, I mean, I think everything has worked relatively well for us, the privileged, who have the good connectivity, because as we mentioned, there is a huge gap. So, and the other part of your points that were very, very important, and also resonate a bit what Martin almost mentioned. Incentives matter. So it's important that we keep the incentives to deploy all the investment that we need to close the gaps, to make sure that this remote work model works. And there's where regulation ideas are most welcome. So that's why I want to open the floor or the screen to Jose Juan Aro, a good friend who always have very, very imaginative ways of approaching these regulation issues. So I'm expecting all of your points, and please, first round, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Angel. It's really a pleasure to be sharing this digital space with so many friends, both in the public and in the private sector. The first thing I would have to say is to recognize all the hard work we've performed as an ecosystem, basically to be together with our clients in Latin America during these difficult times. And this is exactly how I feel about the government efforts, as well as the private sector, both on the telecom arena and on the digital services team. And of course, I do recognize all the efforts made by the people of Netflix or of the digital community in general in trying to facilitate our work. And as you said, we feel that as an industry, we have responded as good as we could during these difficult times, maintaining service and trying to affect as less as possible social life. That being said, of course, there comes a time where regulatory measures need to be evaluated. And in doing so, I will try to borrow from the famous Sergio Leone movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is basically a way to say, you know, there were some very good movements by governments and regulators during this pandemic that have helped a lot in serving the clients. And that obviously is comprised under the good general idea. And just to mention some of the measures that were raised by the distinguished public officers before, let me refer to the deployment facilitation measures in the particular case of Peru, or the case of temporary assignments of a spectrum that were put in place not only in Peru, but also in other countries as Panama, and the fiscal relief, fiscal and regulatory relief that was launched in Colombia, as Vice Minister Ivan Mantilla basically stated, and similar measures deployed in Brazil, or infrastructure subsidies as the kind of measures that were raised by distinguished Pamela Guidi. So this is the first part of the equation. It's undeniable that public officers and government in general took notice of the problems and moved as fast as they could, basically in trying to facilitate our work. And that is something that needs to be recognized. But at the same time, it is also necessary, just as we start to plan the future, to understand what could be done, what could have been done better. And that and accordingly, it is necessary to refer to the bad moves. So the bad basically has been related with measures that were undertaken without, we believe, sufficient analysis. No? The first week of the pandemic, for instance, in the case of Peru, the regulator decided to issue a general regulatory measure, and it's a little bit questionable that he had sufficient powers to restrain, in general terms, collections and suspensions of service. Obviously, the industry understands the need to be together, to be, to attend our clients in difficulties. But the reality is that not everybody is in difficulty. You know, the people that is connected to this webinar, in fact, are keeping their jobs, are receiving revenue, and accordingly, it is absolutely justifiable that they would have to bear the cost of the services they receive. But in the particular case of the telecommunications industry, at least in some countries, and that was the case of Peru or the case of El Salvador, some regulators or governments actually believed that it was necessary to offer general relief to everybody. And there comes obviously a big problem, because, you know, collections reduced heavily in the particular case of Ecuador, for instance. We suffered a lot from these particular kind of measures, and only after discussing heavily with governments, we have been able to modify approaches and basically to concentrate the efforts only on weak clients, on clients that are passing through difficulties. The second sort of measures that are bad, obviously, relate to price controls. And this is particularly true in the case of Argentina, and actually Undersecretary Olmos is right in saying that, you know, almost all the industry is against the approach that was entertained in the particular case of Argentina, because we believe that, you know, price controls are not a good measure in competitive markets. and that actually price flexibility is necessary to attract investments, which are much needed in times of distress. So basically, we seriously believe that the measures devoted to restraint in general terms, collections and suspensions of services, and obviously price controls are not good approaches and need to be changed. But the third thing relates to the ugly. And there's a very ugly part in Latin America. And this is related with the size of the unconnected. Because at the same time where we are discussing, you know, about the marvelous possibilities of 5G that are likely gonna be offered only in urban areas, which is particularly true in the case of Chile, we sometimes are overlooking at the biggest problem we have in our region, which is that of digital exclusion. Just let me share with you a very, very difficult number that was shared by Mario Cimoli from CEPAL some weeks ago. CEPAL is calculating that about 32 million children are being affected in their educational process as a result of disconnection, of digital disconnection. And this is huge. We are not speaking about networks. We are not speaking about digital services. We are speaking about human lives and their prospect of a dignified future. And as that, we believe that all the efforts need to be taken basically to overcome this deficit of connectivity in Latin America. And that actually, you know, on top of 5G discussions related to connectivity, to digital inclusion, to the democratization of the digital process are much needed. And that is why from Telefonica, we released some weeks ago a document that is available on our website, which calls for a new digital deal to build back better our societies, putting at the center, you know, these human needs, and obviously recognizing that in order to build up a true digital society in Latin America, we need to increase coverage and we need to focus our attention in digital inclusion. Thank you very much, Angel.
No, totally agree, and I will pick your brain, Jose Juan, in the second and final round on the initiatives that you at Telefonica are doing in some countries as Peru, and how we can leverage those efforts in order to close that digital divide. So, but before going there, just a second and last round with the private sector. Now I have the public sector officials wanted to react, but let's wait just a minute and then do a second round and start again with Paula Piña from Netflix. I mean, how are you seeing the region? I mean, obviously Latin America is a young region. Creation is here. Using of technology is here, so it has the fundamentals. Everybody is innovating how we consume entertainment. The prospects of the video on demand market are to double every 3, 4, 5 years maximum. So I think we are the best to teach us a bit how we can move forward and what is the vision you have in order to spur this digital transformation, digital market in the region.
Thank you, Angel. Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think the market is changing and evolving very rapidly. I mean, Latin America has always been very much at the forefront in terms of adoption and interest in technology. You know, early adopters, folks are always interested in the new and whatever was the new mode of delivery for content in particular. We also know that, you know, we in Latin America love to watch content. We love to watch content from all over the world. We are a great source of content. There are fantastic storytellers, fantastic talent, visions from Latin America, stories from Latin America. They travel the world. So I think there are several ways in which we can sort of do our part to encourage this digital transformation. I mean, certainly the greater availability and consumption of online content creates more demand for faster and more robust broadband connections. That's the basic. We've been talking about the virtuous cycle for several years now, where I think there is an understanding that the reality is that people will connect to faster, will request faster, more expensive sometimes internet connections to get access to more exciting content. And I think the influx of online service providers, online content providers in the region, it's not just Netflix, it's certainly, Amazon and HBO and Disney that are launching later this year. It's the local players like Global Play and Bling. I think that just creates this environment where people want more and more connections, and that will create the incentive that these internet service providers have to continue to do what they do best, which is connecting people's homes to the internet. I think where we have a role to play is in making sure that our content is delivered efficiently. And like we said, I mentioned before, we've done things on the technological side to make sure that's happening. We also have a very robust program in Latin America called Open Connect. So this is a network of delivery of content servers that we partner with our local ISPs and countries across the region to make sure that our content is located in their networks. So it's local, it's close, so that internet service providers can sort of save some of the costs that are usually associated with having to go pick up traffic all the way in the US. And we believe it's through engagements like this, through the Open Connect network and through technological developments that we can, and of course, I would be amiss to not mention the content, the importance of great content that people want to watch. It's through that I think we can do our part in making sure we are, contributing to the virtuous cycle, and that there's more and more incentives for faster digital transformation and better and better internet connections.
Well, thanks, and I will break the protocol and make a follow-up question with you. Production. I mean, have you already plans to resume production? How are you seeing this, and how is your stream? I mean, obviously, if, Warner Brothers, Warner Media, we are struggling with resuming all the content, because content is king. So I would like to just to have a follow-up, very short.
Yeah, I think, certainly there are several studies out there that have talked about the importance of audiovisual productions to encourage economies, local economies in general. I think there is one study that I can think of that has highlighted that in particular in the post-COVID world, when productions are in a place, it's not just the production, the money that is sort of directly invested in the production, the hiring of people, but it's the local ecosystem that it supports with, hotels and foods and taxis and things like that. So I think for us, it's very important that resumes. We think it's important for economies as well, for countries, that production resumes. However, we do need to make sure everybody's safe. I think governments have been doing a tremendous job in working with their industries to come up with protocols for return to production practices. We, of course, are following the recommendations in each country. We are working with our local providers, content providers or content producers, to make sure that productions are being done in a way that is healthy and safe for everybody, but also to make sure people can get back to work, because I think this industry wants nothing more than to get back to work, as long as it can be done safely. So we definitely think return to production is an important aspect of this. And governments have been doing, I must say, a tremendous job in putting together protocols to make sure that that's done safely.
Thanks, Paula. So from content to internet and the connectivity provision, Mario, also your vision on the region, and specifically, obviously, on Brazil, one of the engine of growth in South America. Where are your views, and where are also some of the actions, the plans that Team Brazil has for the region, in order to be a partner of the governments that we have been insisting, this morning?
Thank you, Angel. Basically, I think we can put the attention on two big processes, two big fields, and to what to do and what not to do effectively, now joined with the sector and the government. First of all, of course, is 5G. 5G is the roadmap of 5G in Brazil is already ongoing. There are technical issues to be solved. Interference was very, very clear on it, and we are working together in these solutions. But in general, when we talk about 5G, we have to consider what is the etymological root of telecommunication is telos, that in Greek means distance. What happened in the last 10 years is that with the broadband communication and not voice communication, broadband communication overshadowed the concept of distance. No? So now digital communication is turning more to a sort of digital interrelations between people and things. Why this is important? Because the business model of 5G should be considered not anymore a business model business to consumer, the operator that sells something to the mass market, but something more closer to business to consumers, in which the second business is the strategic sector, digitalized sector, that probably will deliver the digital experience. And we talk about transportation, logistics, health, telemedicine, security, and education, etc. This is very relevant because I think that it is crucial that public policy, in particular on spectrum price and spectrum allocation, consider that the old way to calculate the so-called net present value, to monetize the revenues, the future revenues, is not applicable in an environment in which you don't know exactly what the business model is or the business models are, and what is exactly how to make money on this. We all know that this is transformational. We don't know yet what this means in terms of value. So we have to consider not the net present value to be monetized, but the net future value to be created. And that's why I appreciate the erudite quote of Sergio Leone or Jose Juan, and I put another one, another movie, famous movie, is for few dollars more. So the point is that we have to avoid that for a few dollars more, we kill a promising future. And the second, very, very briefly, attention of public policy, I think that is on passive infrastructure. Telecommunication regulation is always concentrated in the relation between telecom operator. But today, we see that some crucial essential facility for investment in new networks are in the hands of actors that are not exactly telecom operators. We are talking about rights of way, poles, towers, duct. So it's fundamental to find a new equilibrium and probably a new shape of regulation in order to put this essential facility in a condition not to be bottlenecks, because it will be very, very important, these relations between the traditional telecom world and the world that is not traditionally telecom, but is fundamental to deployment of the new networks. Thank you.
Thank you, and this is precisely why I mean at these conferences, hopefully in Miami soon, we always struggle and we always forced to have different actors in all the digital ecosystem. Obviously, not only the media but also in the digital transformation one. So that's a very good point. And another reference. So we already have 2 movies to watch. That's why I love to share panels with you guys. Let's go to the last formal slot with Jose Juan Haro. And you mentioned, Jose Juan, the issue of connectivity. Obviously, I mean, we have listened and we have read the economic forecasts of all the international organizations that say that Latin America might be losing 1 decade in terms of economic growth. But if you turn into inequality, let's say the time that we might be losing, it would be 1.5 or 2 decades, precisely because the heat is unequal. And the heat is unequal because right now you and I, we are working, and all of us, we are more or less working. So I know you launched in your country, your home country, native country, Peru, Internet para Todos with Facebook and with the Development Bank of America, CAF, a very interesting, a very imaginative project. So just to close this round, what was that about, and how can we make sure that it can be leveraged? Which are the, let's say, impeding that it goes further?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Angel. In fact, we are very proud of the Internet para Todos experience in Peru. This has been, matter of lots of discussions during these several months. I would say we launched our service in May 2019, so the company has less than 2 years already. And we aim to connect the 6 million unconnected Peruvians that existed when the company launched. And we are already complied with 1/3 of that objective. Obviously, connecting the 4 additional million is going to be much harder. But in doing that, actually, we wanted to stress 3 fundamental ideas. No? The first one is related with cooperation and disruption. We truly believe it is much needed to question everything that the industry and the regulators used to believe in for basically, developing urban networks. No? In developing rural networks, first, we believe there is an opportunity not to duplicate facilities. And sometimes, competition policy is against that. It turns out that Peru enacted a very interesting law allowing for a legal figure named Operador de Infraestructura Móvil Rural, no? A mobile rural infrastructure provider. And that's the kind of provider that Internet para Todos has become. Basically, this is a wholesale provider offering service to any interested MNO in Peru. And currently, IPT is providing service not only to Telefónica, but also to Entel. And we're pretty sure that we're gonna attract other MNOs as well. And by doing that, obviously, improve economies of scale and making, the network more sustainable. And second, in this particular case, we believe it is necessary to encourage disruption, cooperative disruption. Actually, IPT was probably the first mobile player in Latin America that bet heavily on Open RAN solutions. And we are doing, lots of explorations, and actually not only partnering with Facebook, but also with providers of other technologies. We have also tested Loom, for instance, in cooperation with Google in Peru. So the first part of the equation is to open, so to say, the table and let everybody in and make everybody, not only telco operators, but also governments and digital players, part of the solution, not only part of the problem. The second thing, and this is something in a way that Adriana Labardini has been suggesting through some lots of questions she has posted in the chat of this event. Is related with involving the communities and try to make this a truly social approach. But by doing that, I think it is a mistake to believe that only small players, community operators, are the ones that are going to solve the unconnected problem, close the digital divide. Actually, we believe that substantial investments and capabilities are necessary in this particular endeavor. And in recognizing that, obviously, we believe it is fundamentally not only unfair, but also a mistake to give only relief, for instance, regarding spectrum prices to small operators like the so-called Red Compartida, the shared network of Mexico, but not extending those privileges to the traditional MNOs. And it is obviously one big problem. No? The particular case of Mexico, for instance, even in the midst of this pandemic, the government has proposed the legislative power not to decrease, but to increase a spectrum annual fees that has to be paid for traditional MNOs to the government. Fortunately enough, it seems that the legislative power finally understood that this was sort of a problem. Obviously, I'm speaking in general terms about what we believe in Telefónica is correct. But to be bluntly honest, last year we decided to partner with AT&T to use their network going forward, mainly because the high spectrum prices made our business case unsustainable, and we were unable to compete, paying those fees. And this is sad, because, when you increase spectrum prices, you not only reduce the likelihood of national coverage, but at the same time, you are sort of promoting market concentration, because only players that are big enough to pay those high prices are the ones that could make a profitable business. So the second thing here is, not to have prejudgments about the size of the operators or the nature of the operators that are interested in closing the digital divide. And basically that forces or does suggest the need to give everybody the relief that is necessary to make sustainable business cases. No? And as I said, we believe this has been a very interesting experience. Our plans are to launch in new countries in the months coming, and we are already working on that. I'm not gonna disclose any information whatsoever, but we believe the IDB and CAF and maybe others are gonna join us, because this is probably the biggest challenge we face as an industry, but also as a society, and we believe it is our responsibility to do our best to try to close that divide. Thank you very much.
No, thanks, Jose Juan. And let me pick your last point. I think the role of the regional development banks in order to close the digital divide, especially when we are talking that the estimates are that in order to approach the region to the connectivity levels of OECD countries, we need 2 points of GDP in terms of the crisis. So it's important that we do these public-private partnerships or even multilateral public-private partnerships in order to mobilize all these funds. And it's going to be a win-win-win for citizens, for governments, and also for the private sector. So given the time, I'm going to ask my private sector colleagues to forgive me, because I'm not going to give them the last round. I'm going to just give the round to our policymakers from Peru, Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. We have the best panelists in the world, because they were already responding most of the questions that you, the audience, have launched. But I will start with Virginia, because there are some good projects and ideas in order to extend connectivity and close the digital divide in Peru. And actually, some of the questions relate to that. I mean, how are regulators innovating in policies for small operators, for community networks, but also, as Jose Juan Aro from Telefónica mentioned, how are they partnering also with big providers? So let's use this final slot, Virginia, to address these issues and whatever reaction you might have also for the rest of the comments.
Thank you, Angel. And to be very honest, I agree with the ideas of Jose Juan about the important challenge, and that as a society, we have to face this new normality, this new environment. And in this way, it's very important to note that, for example, during the health emergency, it was very important, the great interaction between the public and private sector. In Peru, yes, of course, we had problems about the regulation, about the specific regulations that impact in the industry, but we could resolve this problem very fast. Okay, so we are now the market, the Peruvian market is very healthy, and it's increased the operations in all of the terms. In fact, I want to share with you and with all the people is the fiber project optic that we are working in Peru. In Peru, 19% of the population is connected. The Peruvian government must use a series of tools to achieve more connected Peruvians, increasing coverage and connecting citizens more and more is a permanent task. In this sense, the strategy has been to prioritize the advancements of our regional broadband projects and assign radio spectrum temporarily. Regional project broadbands are organized into 4 groups. In order to benefit the times, I want to resume only that Group 1 and Group 2. This group is one with the greatest advance and will connect more than 3,300 rural areas. Apurímac, Huancavelica, and Ayacucho, which are very into the rural areas in Peru, which are part of Group 1, are currently in operation now. The regions of Lambayeque and Cusco are close to start operation after their supervision by Pronatel. We are expecting that this year enter to operation full. More than 2,000 educational centers, approximately 1,000 health centers, and 140 police stations will benefit. And Group 3 and Group 4 that we are in execution now, 30 projects are currently in progress. Together, both groups will connect that more than 6,400 rural areas into the more rural areas inside my country. More than 4,000 educational centers, approximately 2,000 health centers, and 300 police stations will benefit. Additionally, Group 4 will develop just over 400 demand aggregation centers that are spaces in which internet access will be provided by the operators. In fact, it is very important to know that digital abilities will be housed in these centers by these operators. And now we are promoting the regional project in Loreto, the jungle, with technology disruptive. Okay, that is very important to note that Amazon is very different. It is very different. So we must we must be very creative in order to establish a new solution for this area. Internet access and during all that emerging skills, training for the development of digital skills. So this is a group of actions in order to advance of our regional broadband projects in the more rural areas in Peru. We hope and we expect that the next year, all the projects will be finished and we can connect the unconnected people in rural areas in Peru. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Virginia. Very, very active agenda and addressing some of the questions. There are more other questions in the chat and some suggestions. Unfortunately, I really, really respect the time of everybody, and we have exactly 1.5 minutes. So 20 seconds intervention, speed ones. Arthur, first Ivan, Arthur, and Martin, just to close up and for everybody to have a short coffee before the next video, which I'm pretty sure everybody has. So Ivan, go ahead.
Thank you, Angel. Very short. I think that if you see the intervention of our policymaker colleagues and also the private sector, maybe now it's clear that we have to work together in a collaborative work. The telecom operators, of course, working on deployment more infrastructure, but also with the platform, we have to work together in order to provide, for example, more options, more alternative to the user, recognizing all our social problems in the society to provide an internet more attractive to the people in order to increase the use also, and in order to provide tools and the internet that solve our problems. I think this is the main message, as also work together to increase the investment, because it means close the digital divide means new investment, and in Latin America, all the countries that you see need more investment, public and private. Thank you, Angel, and all the audience to this.
Thank you, Ivan. Arthur, last short intervention, please.
Yes, thank you, Angel. I would just like to send a brief message that the Brazilian government is committed to fostering and also making a better environment for investments and for all kinds of companies and all kinds of initiatives, especially also for small businesses. Brazil has one of the largest number of small operators in the world for fixed broadband. They represent more than 35% of all market share regarding fixed broadband in Brazil. And that is due to our taxation environment that benefits small businesses, but also to a low level of regulatory burden that Anatel has been preparing for a long time now. So that's our commitment, and we hope we can have more investments each year. Thank you.
Thank you, Artur. And last, Martin, last 30 seconds, please.
Thank you, Angel, and the IIC and the rest of the panelists. Just let me especially thank Jose Juan honest views on our policies. Let me tell you that the bad will pass soon, and we can keep working together to overcome the ugly. Which I agree is the digital divide. We have a lot to do regarding 4G, 5G, regarding spectrum, regarding the deployment of infrastructure, regarding reaching the rural areas. So we're here to keep working for universal access for everyone. So. Thank you all, and we'll keep in touch.
Perfect concluding remarks. Only 2 minutes over time, so I would like to thank you all. Thank all the support, all the ideas, and all the partnership with the IIC. For AT&T is always a pleasure to hold this event. We set the standard very high. We hope we will be able to do so in the next future in Miami, resuming the usual venue in the new normal. But I think today we had a lot of good food for thought and good food for action. So have a great morning, great afternoon, those who are in Europe, and hope to see you soon in next events of the IIC, in the virtually or personally. Thanks, bye.